the women face a tremendous amount of violence and abuses.
Tonight, testimony on an issue that Canada is just waking up to. Where there's resource extraction and transient workers, Indigenous women are victimized.
It isn't just about hydro, it's about the system, it's about the processes involved in generating this energy source.
Hydro development is often called clean energy. You wouldn't hear that from the Cree who live near the dams. We'll show you the impacts of their land and culture.
And how the winner of the Polaris Prize owes some of the fame to his ancestors. Good evening, welcome to APTN National News. I'm Dennis Ward.
And I'm Melissa Ridgen. The national inquiry into missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls is in Quebec City this week. The focus is on the criminal justice system.
So far, they have heard from the largest Indigenous police force in Canada and how they're struggling to do their job. Tom Fenario has the story.
At the end of the week, Terry Armstrong is retiring after over 30 years of policing in Northern Ontario. According to his testimony, rarely was he able to adequately do his job.
When you put on a badge and say you're going to protect people and you don't have the tools to do it, and you see the devastation day in and day out, and you know that there's remedies, it's tough.
Armstrong describes a dire situation for the 147 Anishinaabe-Aski police officers sworn to protect a population of 45,000. He says that almost a quarter of the police force is on stress or disability leave. He blames a lack of resources, citing officers that have no radios or partners while they are on duty. He also described several situations where officers were left on their own to secure multiple crime scenes at the same time.
We're not on the same playing field as the municipal police forces and provincial police forces in the province.
In 2013, 23-year-old Lena Anderson took her own life in an Anishinaabe-Aski police vehicle. The arresting officer had left her in the car to stay warm because the heat in the police station was broken. The officer left her alone for 16 minutes in order to go get an off-duty officer to assist him. Anderson's death led to an inquiry. The Anishinaabe-Aski Police Services chairperson Mike Metatawabin testifies that for years negotiations with provincial governments for more funding went nowhere.
It was always take it or leave it. And we had to do it before a certain date because elections were a month or 2 months away.
But in 2017, Anishinaabe-Aski Nation had a breakthrough. They were able to get First Nations in Ontario included into the Police Services Act. This means that Ontario is now legally obligated to adequately fund First Nations police forces. Now, starting in January, Anishinaabe-Aski Police will begin to hire 79 more police officers over the course of the next 5 years. They'll also be receiving radios. Armstrong says the ultimate goal is to focus more on crime prevention.
It's hard to be proactive when you're always reacting, when you don't have enough people to do that. A lot of the program we can help, with the educational and just being part of the community from a proactive side, there's so much more that we could do if given the same opportunities as other police services to have.
As he heads off into retirement, Armstrong hopes that he's leaving the Anishinaabe-Aski police force stronger than when he found it, and that as a result, First Nations women in Northern Ontario will be safer. Tom Fenario, APTN National News, Quebec City.
How many missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls there are depends on who you ask. A Cheyenne woman who is doing her doctoral at Alberta's University of Lethbridge took it upon herself to make a database. It's the largest and most expansive ever done, with 3,000 names. I talked with Anita Lucchesi earlier to find out how she did it. Hi, Anita. Thank you for joining me. So what happened when you went looking for a figure for missing murdered Indigenous women and girls?
I found that there are plenty of lists out there, but none of them match. They all catalog different information. They all are updated, not very frequently, if at all. And none of them include both countries. And so I felt a responsibility to kind of fill that gap.
So, and how did you, to give me a little bit of your background, this isn't your first rodeo when it comes to charting things like this. Give me a little bit of your background and then how you went about compiling this data.
Sure. So I'm a PhD student at the University of Lethbridge, and the database actually grew out of a project I was working on as a master's student at Washington State. And that project was to map all the different ways that Indigenous people are made to disappear. So MMIW is one of many issues on that map. And that's when I found there was just no decent working number. But as a survivor of violence myself, I've been really passionate about this issue for years. And so in that moment, when I found that there was just no, reliable data, I felt like as a survivor, if I had been killed and if I hadn't been lucky to get away from my abuser, I would want my story to have meaning and to be part of the effort to make things better for future generations of women and girls. So that's kind of the heart that I bring to the work.
So how many women are on this database then? And can you tell us from what year to what year and in what areas? You said both countries. Is it all across the United States and Canada?
Yes, it's all across both countries. It's 1900 to the present, but right now about 75% of the data is post-1980 because that's what's more readily available.
So what makes your database different from all the other ones that are out there? I mean, it's more fulsome, obviously, but is there are there other differences within the database?
It's different in the sense that it's not held by a government agency. It's not funded by the government. It's not funded, through an academic type of organization. It's completely sovereign. This is something by and for the community. And so the data that we track is also based on dialogue with community members about what they think is important to know about these women and the forms of violence they experience.
Who can Who can access this database? Who do you want using it?
There's a really broad array of people that use it. So the majority of it have been grassroots activists and Indigenous organizations working on the ground to address the violence, but also policymakers have used it quite a bit. Journalists have accessed it, and even recently coroners who are looking to identify Jane Does that they think may be Indigenous have also accessed it.
And where could we find it?
The database website is mmiwdatabase.com, and out of respect for families and the discretion that should be used for this data, it's not posted online. So if anyone's interested in accessing it, all they have to do is email me, and that information is on the site, and we can talk about getting you what you need.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, and congratulations on this. Is a pretty outstanding work. You must be very proud of it, and thanks for sharing these details with us. It's a great work.
Thank you for having me.
Today's topic at the MMIWG National Inquiry hearings was how the resource extraction industry endangers Indigenous women. Here again is Tom Fenario.
I've often talked to women who have experienced violence the previous night from somebody that they met that is just in town working.
Connie Grey Eyes is a Cree frontline worker who lives in the northeastern BC town of Fort St. John. Grey Eyes is testifying about how the resource extraction industry adversely affects Indigenous women.
We often find that the women face a tremendous amount of violence and abuses, one of the main ones being financial abuse. Within Fort St. John, it's near impossible for a woman to actually leave a relationship and not live in deep poverty.
The Amnesty International report, Out of Sight, Out of Mind, backs up what Grey Eyes has to say. About 12% of people in northeastern BC are Indigenous, but communities like Fort St. John will see their populations balloon by thousands of transient workers. Most of these workers are men, and the income they earn is significantly more than locals. This drives up the cost of food and lodging, as well as the crime rate, where Fort St. John ranks as the 11th highest of over 200 communities.
You're having a lot of people with stretched policing resources, and the people who are coming in are demographic associated with higher levels of crime. So policing resources themselves are incredibly stretched.
Amnesty International's Jacqueline Hansen adds that transient workers don't pay taxes where they work. As a result, surrounding First Nations dependent on Fort St. John for police find that they are underfunded and often unavailable.
There's a lot of stories of women who had called the police after being attacked or beaten up in the community, where it was upwards of a couple hours before the police actually made it out there.
Hansen says that studies show that Fort St. John is not alone. Communities that serve as resource extraction hubs from all across Canada suffer from the same issues of a high level of crime and increased cost of living. Amnesty International ended their testimony today with recommendations that they hope will be acted upon.
Send in more officers who are trained, who have cultural competency training that's specific to the area where they're going to be serving.
Tom Fenario, APTN National News, Quebec City.
British Columbia's Court of Appeal has granted a temporary injunction that stops a BC mining company from drilling for gold and copper in Chilcotin Traditional Territory. Last month, the BC Supreme Court upheld a permit allowing Taseko Mines Limited to drill in an area known as Fish Lake. The Chilcotin Nation appealed this ruling, and yesterday the BC Court of Appeal granted an injunction prohibiting the drilling program until the court hears and decides the case.
Happy to hear that injunction went our way. Still get the relief, and the company won't go away. You know, as long as they're alive, and that company is still has interest there, they'll continue to tap into the stock market and pull in investors' dollars. You know, we got burial ground. We're not going to allow open pit mining right over top of our ancestral remains. Absolutely not.
Time for a quick break after tomorrow's weather forecast.
But first, here's a look at what we'll have after the break. Stay with us.
I'm Ashley Branson. In southern Manitoba, we rely on a hydropower system located in the northern part of the province. But what we don't see is how hydro development has affected these First Nations. We speak to community members and they show us firsthand how it impacts their lives and their land. That's coming soon on APTN National News.
To the east coast, we have 10 with mostly sunny skies in St. John, 16 and rain in Fredericton. Nookshawaxin at 4 with a mix of sun and cloud, 6 in Nain with a mix of sun and cloud. Saint Jovite 19 and sunny, Val d'Or is 14 and sunshine. 22 and rain in Toronto and London, 22 and sunny in Ottawa. Kapuskasing and Timmins are sunshine and 17. 7s for Pakatawagan and Thompson with mostly cloudy skies and rain. 12 and some rain in Dauphin, a mix of sun and cloud in Winnipeg, and 13 as well in Gimli. 11 mix of sun and cloud in Saskatoon, and 12 mix of sun and cloud in Regina. Buffalo Narrows rain and 7, L'Orange 6 and rain. Welcome back. Manitobans depend on electricity produced in the northern part of the province, but at the other end of the transmission line is a reality few of us ever see. A member of a northern community says they're losing a way of life as a result of hydro development. Ashley Branson brings us this.
I have to have some kind of hope and hope for my children.
Meet Ramona Nekaway.
And I'm from a hydro-affected community.
She's a member of Nisitchawayasik Cree Nation.
Focus a lot of my research on the impacts and effects of hydro and the production of hydro.
She's also an assistant professor at the University College of the North.
It isn't just about hydro, it's about the system, it's about the processes involved in generating this energy source. People, I think, who use the energy don't know that, and the environmental consequences are so great. Our people are very resilient people, and you know, they're very kind and generous and giving, and in spite of all of this. So the guy that was tying the boat, that's my uncle. Oh, okay.
Nekaway's mother lived her entire life without hydro development until the 1970s, when the construction of the Churchill River diversion began, making Nekaway a second-generation hydro-impacted Cree. She says she wants her kids and her grandchild to know not just the impacts, but the significance water has in their culture.
The land and the water is so, so important. This water, like, to the very core of me, I feel like it's so integral to who we are. It's been a big part of our history.
She explains the rivers helped connect different communities.
These were our highways, and so they were very important, and they are very important. And our kids need to know why they were, why they are, and why they continue to be important.
We'll visit Grand Rapids today and drive the rest of the way to Norway House overnight.
Nekaway is part of an alliance of university researchers, community members, and non-governmental organizations. They're called Winiskatan.
So Winiskatan is Cree, and so it means wake up, you know, to awaken or to rise up.
And that's exactly what they want to do. Awaken people across the province and bring attention to the devastating impacts hydro development has on these northern communities. Winiskatan is ready to begin their annual tour of northern Cree nations. Their first stop is Mississippi Cree Nation, over 400 kilometers north of Winnipeg. Elder Gerald McKay greets the alliance with a meal of freshly caught fish. He shares stories about how hydro took over their community in the 60s by bringing in outsiders.
There was probably 5,000 strangers here, and a lot of them weren't working. And so at nighttime there would be a lot of action at night. Like people would steal the clothes, like go off the clothesline and stuff like that.
Members of Mississippi experienced racism and inequality.
When we were kids, like we weren't allowed on the bus here. Like we used to have to walk from here. When I was 6 years old, I started walking from here to the school. And because the bus wouldn't pick us up, it was only for hydro kids. And then that bus would go by us. Like sometimes it was only half full. We're just going to go around this point. We'll come out right where we went in there. It's just a big circle.
McKay drives us through his community.
Yeah, it's basically just
and shows the difference between local First Nations and hydro housing. Yeah. He points something out to us that most people could easily miss.
Okay, there's 2 meters right here, look. To the right.
Oh yeah.
One house, 2 meters.
He says the company pays for those workers' hydro, but that's not the case for the locals.
We're all basically struggling to pay our hydro bills. My lowest hydro bill is about $70 a month in the summer, and my highest is about $400.
Some community members recall the promise of free hydro during the time of the Northern Flood Agreement in the 70s, but that never happened.
Well, you know, it's the same as everything else, like the treaties. They're just words. You know, there's no, they don't mean it when they say stuff like that.
The construction of the Grand Rapids generating station was completed in 1968, but this is just the first of what will become a large network of dams that would alter the waters and land of Treaty 5 territory and the lives of those living here.
In some of our communities, the access to the land and the water has been deeply impacted by the production of electricity. So we're unable, in some cases, to go out there and to experience the land and to get the teachings and benefit from that experience out in the land.
Ashley Branson, APTN National News, Mississippi Cree Nation.
Stay tuned for part 2 of this series looking at the effects of hydro development. We visit Norway House and Fox Lake Cree Nation next, and to show you how they've been impacted from the past until now.
Time for another quick break, but when we come back, a Maliseet musician has won the prestigious Polaris Prize.
And an Indigenous woman is in an international golf competition, but first, here's the rest of tomorrow's weather. Starting in northern Alberta, we've got 4 and rain in High Level, 8 and rain in Peace River, 9 and rain in Calgary. Edmonton's mostly sunny and 12. 15 in Campbell River and Tofino and Victoria with some rain there. East Lake 12 and mostly sunny. 12 in Smithers but rain. 13 in sunshine in Dawson City, 12 and sunshine in Whitehorse. Up in Old Crow 6 and sunshine. Norman Wells is 2 and sunny. Wrigley 3 and sunny. Fort Simpson got some rain and 2. Tuck is in at -3 but a mix of sun and cloud. Colville Lake -3 with some snow. Baker Lake with some rain and -1, +1 in Arviat.
Arctic Bay, rain and 1. Cloud River 1 in mix of sun and cloud. And Pangatung is also 1 in mix of sun and cloud.
Welcome back. A woman from Alberta is the first Indigenous woman to represent Canada in an international golf competition, but it didn't come easy. Tamara Pimentel has more.
Practicing for long drive, it kind of resets myself. It takes my mind off what's going on.
Irene Crowchild has marked a year and a half of sobriety, and in that time has been putting hours in at the range working toward her dream, to compete in the Canadian long drive competition. And she's done it. The 27-year-old from Tsuut'ina First Nation was the first Indigenous person to tee up and win the women's title in the competition, driving 310 yards. And in November, she'll be representing Canada at an international competition in Mexico.
I'm very proud, humbly proud, very blessed for the way my journey has been. And I want other people to feel the happiness I feel, to feel the peace I feel, because I know it's tough.
Crowchild says it couldn't have happened without sobriety. In February of 2017, she turned her life around when she reached out for help and went for treatment.
When I finally reached out, I felt embarrassed, I felt ashamed, but I stuck with it. I waited 2 months until I could get a bed, and it's been the best decision of my life. And if I could break that stigma of like showing other First Nations people, youth, adults, that it's wonderful, it's worth it, and that feeling of embarrassment and being ashamed, it goes away.
As she prepares for the international stage, a dream that seemed so impossible, Crowchild says she hopes others learn from her story.
This is my dream. This is what I'm passionate about. First Nations or not First Nations, I want people to believe in themselves, to go after their dreams, to take that jump. It can be done, and making my impossibles possible.
Tamara Pimentel, APTN National News, near the Tsuut'ina Nation.
It was a surreal moment for Jeremy Dutcher when he heard his name called out last night. Dutcher was declared the winner of the 2018 Polaris Prize, one of the most prestigious music awards handed out in Canada. The $50,000 prize is awarded strictly on artistic merit. Dutcher is Maliseet from Tobique First Nation in New Brunswick, and his award-winning album combines his classically trained operatic tenor voice with traditional Wollastoke songs from 1907.
There's so many people working on language and linguistic reclamation from coast to coast to coast on Turtle Island here. So for me, I hope it's just part of a larger narrative of our peoples returning in a big way to those languages and to those ways of knowing.
And huge congrats to Jeremy Dutcher and all the other Polaris Prize nominees. I got to say, you and I called that one a couple of months ago.
Yes, yeah. Got to see him live. I was lucky.
Indigenous people have done very well at the Polaris Prize. Tanya Tagak and Buffy St. Marie, past winners.
Now that's your APTN National News for Tuesday. There's more on our website, aptnnews.ca. I'm Melissa Ridgen.
And I'm Dennis Ward. Have a great night.